Welcome back to Up the Cinema Podcast. And this week I'm going to bring you one of my favorite movies of all time. So I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, rate us, and share this episode with a friend or family or even a stranger that you think might enjoy this. I have one question for you. They shoot horses, don't they?
I guess they do. So since this is one of your favorite movies, why don't you give the brief synopsis for this episode?
It's a pretty straightforward movie. I really enjoy movies that take place in one location, and this pretty much does. And it's a dance marathon on a boat for a lot of desperate people. They're willing to go through a lot of pain to make some money that they desperately need.
Yeah, because this is set during the Great Depression, a lot of people were out of work. Their money was pretty hard to come by, and you just had all these different types of people and characters in this movie that all had very different, I would say, personalities and ways that they ended up in this
Mm-hmm.
dance marathon, but they all have the one thing in common, in that they're desperate for money.
Well, there's one couple that's not super desperate for money, but they want to be famous. That's the one like standout couple.
Yeah,
The Jane Fonda character ends up joining the guy. And
right.
speaking of Jane Fonda, she's absolutely great in this.
Yeah, she really made me she's a very hard character to like at the beginning 'cause she's very
Mm-hmm.
harsh, but as the movie progresses, you kind of start to sympathize with her character.
Yeah, she's very cold. I mean, she's very cold all the way through, but you kind of start understanding her more, so you forgive her
Right.
coldness.
Right. But the movie starts out with our main character, Robert, who had aspirations of being a film director, but because of the Great Depression and all those types of circumstances, it didn't really pan out for him. And it starts off with him being kind of interrogated for a crime that we don't know
Yeah.
what it's for yet.
The director, Sidney Pollack, splits the interrogation into the movie throughout several points until we get to know more and more of what's happening, and then at the end we know exactly why he's being interrogated.
Right.
And that's when he says the movie title when they put him
Yeah.
in the police van.
Yeah. And he has this, it's kind of like a flashback scene to his youth when he
Mm-hmm.
did see a horse being put out of its misery after it got shot, or after it broke its leg, it got shot.
Yeah, that's because that's how he feels, right? Because the Jane Fonda character is just so broken down at that point, and
Right.
she asks him to kill her, and he remembers that when he was young, the horse was in a lot of pain. There's nothing you could do, so you kill it. So that's exactly what he did to her, and that's why he has to explain himself to the police throughout the movie why he just
Yeah.
shot her.
Yeah, but we don't know he shot her until the very end, pretty much.
Yeah,
So we have all this plot in the middle where you see, I honestly, I think my favorite thing about this movie is probably all the characters
yeah.
um that we're introduced to. We have, Robert, who is our main character, who
He's a
was an
newbie,
aspiring,
and he's a
yeah,
newbie to this,
film
and then we
director.
have characters that have been here before and they're willing to go through it again because they still need more money, like the old sea captain.
Mm-hmm.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah, we have Harry, who is the retired sailor, and he's an old he had fought in the Great War, because at this time we didn't have World War II. It was just the Great War.
mhm.
Um, and you have Alice, who is the aspiring actress.
Yeah, you got a pregnant
Um,
woman,
yeah, and her husband, James and
and
Ruby.
her husband gets very upset at Jane Fonda at some point, or you get some great interaction there.
Yeah, and then we have Jane Fonda's character, who, you don't really, I feel like you never really know her backstory too much in the film.
Yeah, she's semi mysterious. That's part of her coldness, I would say.
Yeah.
You don't know why she's doing what she's doing, but you know she's suffering like everyone else, and that's why you kind of understand her
Yeah.
because everyone's suffering in this. It's really a grueling competition, and these did happen in like real life.
Yeah, because there were still people that had money during this time. It was just a majority of the populace had nothing.
Yeah, this reminds me of what people did in like the early 2000s or the late 90s, where you put your hand in a car and you couldn't lift your hand off of the car to win the car in like shopping malls.
Right.
Those were events. There's a documentary about it called Hands on a Hard Body. Tarantino loves it. I love it. And it's very similar to this, where you see humans suffering because they want something so bad, and that something is monetary.
Yeah. And
It's not
with
like they're trying to achieve a goal or trying to become anything. They just need the money. They're desperate to keep living.
yeah, and I mean, we have I would say the mastermind behind the dance marathon, or at least the host,
Yeah, he's the host.
Rocky. He really tries to hype up the desperateness of these people, but trying to make it fun
Yeah,
for the
he
crowd to watch.
understands that for the participants it sucks and it's awful, but for everyone else, they're just trying to watch a show and have fun. So he understands that it's kind of show business. It's kind of a human circus that they're putting these people through.
Yeah, and he tries to create like artificial drama by stealing contestants' dresses, or,
Hmm.
you know, waking them up in the middle of the night.
But he's also human because you're making him sound like he's the worst person of all time. He also kind of cares for people.
He
There's
does.
a woman that breaks down in the shower and he helps her mentally to like ground herself because she's like going off.
Yeah, but I also think that he's a little bit uncaring because, I mean, he's kind of the reason, not maybe the whole reason, but part of the reason why she was having the mental breakdown
That's
to
true.
begin with. And he says something like, this is too real now. So I think at some point before that, he was probably like, oh, well, they'll be fine even if I am kind of messing with them. Like, there'll be no actual consequences behind this.
Yeah.
But
God, talking about this
there
movie
are.
really just makes me want to watch it. If you haven't watched it, we're just spoiling everything. That's on you because this came out a long time ago. It was in '69. Haha, that's a cool number.
But anyway, as you know, the competition goes on, it goes on for days and weeks, and they don't really have good doctors, to help the patient or the contestants if they're injured mentally or physically.
Yeah, they don't get to
And
sleep. They sleep on each other's
yeah, exactly.
shoulders as they're dancing. They get small breaks here and
Exactly.
there, which is exactly how these car contests I mentioned, that's exactly how they work. You get like a small half an hour break, and if you sleep, you better sleep leaning against the car.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. People are still desperate
Yeah.
as they were in the Great Depression. Not to the same
Yeah, and
level,
like
I would assume.
I say that one of the biggest acts of desperation is at the beginning, Robert and Jane Fonda's character, uh, Gloria, are partnered up, but then they kind of have a falling out, and then they get different partners.
Hmm.
But Gloria ends up being partnered with Harry, and in the middle of these dance marathon, they make them do like a relay race,
Oh yeah,
and you
yeah.
have to finish the race before,
That's to
or like you have to finish at a
eliminate
certain.
people quicker. Because again,
Yeah,
it is a
exactly.
show for the people watching, so you don't want to just stay there where everyone's dancing, no one's being eliminated, nothing's happening. So they have these little gimmicks to make it go faster.
Yeah, exactly. So Harry and Gloria are partnered at this time, and Gloria is so desperate to try and stay in the game, and Harry's not doing well, and he ends up having a heart attack during
Hmm.
like one of the final laps, and Gloria has to drag his body along the floor in order to, you know, stay in the competition, and he ends up that was a fatal heart attack. He ended up dying.
Yeah.
And Rocky, the announcer, has to pretend that, oh, it's just heat exhaustion, he'll be fine, and the crowd's cheering, but really he's dead.
There's a lot
And
of deaths for a movie about dancing. But I guess it's in the title, isn't it?
yes,
It's
but
not they should
it's
horse,
just
it's they should horses. So it's multiple deaths.
but it's just kind of crazy that, the desperation is so bad that you I feel like Gloria in that moment kind of lost her humanity, which
Hmm.
I feel like is common when you're in a situation where you feel that desperate, you know?
For sure. Even though we don't know what she's desperate about, it's very clear that she's desperate. No one would be
Yeah.
there if they weren't desperate.
Yeah,
Because the
exactly.
more you watch it, the worse it is. And those really races are really terrible to watch, and especially the way that Sidney Pollack decided to shoot the scene, it really made it super intense that you felt it. I kind
Yeah,
of
it's like
felt like my
uncomfortable.
feet hurt watching it.
Yeah, and it's just like you see the absolute desperation in these people's faces, and one of the characters that always made me the most uncomfortable or sad to watch was the pregnant woman,
Hmm.
and her husband, and I was so scared that something bad was going to happen to her during the film. Luckily, it didn't, but she's like heavily pregnant trying to win $1,500 for her family, you know?
I think part of why the title is They Should Horses is because you kind of see the characters lose humanity. They're to a point that they don't care that there's a pregnant woman that needs it to take care of her baby. She's like, oh, if you don't have
Yeah.
money, you shouldn't have a baby.
Basically,
So
I'm pretty sure Gloria said that
yeah,
at some
she
point.
says that, and then the husband confronts her. But I think they lose humanity at points, and they're no different from animals, just trying to get their thing, regardless of what that thing is. For them is money, but that's why they compare them to horses. Or Robert compares her to a horse when he shoots her, because at that point she's not Gloria anymore. She's just a broken down version of Gloria.
Yeah. But so after Harry dies, Robert and Gloria are partnered up again, and then we kind of see Rocky have a little bit more humanity in a sense because he suggests that the couple get married so that the customers that are watching this as entertainment will send them gifts or,
I don't agree with you.
favors. I think
I
so.
don't think it's about being human. I think it's about pushing his own agenda, making it more entertaining for his public. Because they don't like
But I
each
mean,
other, really. And he's suggesting that they get married so they get more sponsorships.
but he does tell them that, like, even if they do win the competition, they're not going to make any money because they're going to have to pay back the competition for all the resources that they used
That's
while they were
true.
there.
That's true.
So he's like, this is a suggestion I'm making to you because at least you'll walk away with something,
But I think
you know?
I think it would ultimately benefit him more than it would the participants, personally. I mean,
I
it's
mean,
a lot of this is up for interpretation. This is not like super straightforward. It's a lot of human emotions that you got to connect with, and if you don't, you're not gonna like the movie. Not really.
that's true.
It's not really like
It is.
scenes that you could like put together and make a story. If you're not connecting or understanding how they feel, the story doesn't really matter because it's not
Yeah.
a huge story. They're in a boat dancing. That's the story.
Yeah, that is true, but it's just kind of sad to see. This movie is just kind of sad.
It is sad, but it's so well made.
It is very well
It's
made.
obviously well written because it's based on a great novel, but it's also so well directed. Jane Fonda does such a good job. I don't think she's ever done a better job than this. Maybe in Capaloo.
I do love Cat Ballou, but I think these are the only two Jane Fonda movies I've ever seen, to be
A
honest.
very young Jane Fonda. She,
Yes.
she in herself looked cold, but though she wasn't. She was a great humanitarian. in her youth, but she still looked cold. Her face looks cold. Looks like someone that's not very approachable. So she was
I would
perfectly
agree with
casted
that.
for this. And so is the Robert character. I think his name is Michael, last name. And
Michael Sarzan.
there you go. It's probably right. And he looks a little goofy, a little like he doesn't know what's happening. Like he actually believes that shooting her out of mercy doesn't doesn't make it criminal.
Well, I don't even think it's necessarily that either. I think like maybe there is some truth to that, but I think you have to look at this in a different way too. I mean, they they end up dropping out of the competition after learning that the winners would be left with nothing after everything got deducted, and they'd been on this boat for weeks with very little sleep. I think some part of his judgment wasn't necessarily there all the way
Mm-hmm.
too. So I think that yeah, he probably does think that if you see a suffering horse, you shoot it. You know,
Yeah.
he sees glorious suffering. So in this kind of sleep deprived, um, kind of torture induced mental state.
When you get to that mental state, I think it's when it gets the hardest because you've already been doing this for so long, and it's hard to give up because you feel like it's a waste of time. Everything you did before it meant absolutely nothing, and it did mean absolutely nothing because only one couple will win.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you kind of oh, there's like a term for it, but it's like a sunken cost fallacy or something like that. But it's a little different in this situation. But it's the thought that
It's similar to what you're saying now.
yeah, it's like oh, I put all this effort into it. If I just hold out for another hour, like maybe I'll be the winner. If I hold out for just one more
Yeah,
day,
because
I've
like,
already done.
what's another day if we've been doing it for a week?
Yeah,
It's kind of
exactly.
going to the casino. It's like, what's 10 more bucks if I already blew 100? And then you never stop because you keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes very a dangerous situation, but yeah, this movie just it does a very good job at I think showing human emotion and kind of the really bad side of the Great Depression,
Yeah, it
which
gets really dirty.
it
It's just
does.
the
And
movie
it's kind
looks
of
dirty and everything feels dirty and like you feel dirty for like enjoying the movie, not in a showboat kind of way. Yeah, you would enjoy like a comedy or something like that, but you like enjoy how well it's made, but also like it feels dirty to being into something that is so painful for the people. I'm sure even the actors went through some pain because some of those scenes didn't look very comfortable.
yeah, it definitely does look like it might have taken a lot out of these people. And at least in my education journey, they did kind of talk a lot about the Great Depression, but in a very different way because this takes place in I think it's Santa Monica in California, which is not I would say one of the states or one of the regions that I always thought about when it came to getting hit the hardest by the Great Depression. Because at least in my school, when I was very young, we learned more about it in like English literature because we read a whole bunch of books about people in the Great Depression. And we always learned about the Dust Bowl and how hard it was to live in the Midwest during the Great Depression because you had no money and then also there was no rain, so there would just be dust storms constantly. And it's just kind of it was interesting to watch because it was a different perspective on the same time in history that I felt like I kind of already knew a lot about, you know?
Yeah, there's always more to learn. And it's so complicated, really. Especially in the U.S. The U.S. is so big, and there's so
It
many
is.
people, and there's so many regional differences that it's hard to make it into one thing.
Yeah, because I feel like in They Shoot Horses, don't they? They also kind of focus on the fact that there are people rich enough to go watch this weekly.
Yeah,
And so
yeah, there's the little nice old lady that sponsors our main couple for the movie. She clearly has the time and the money to be doing this.
Yeah, and you see that, but like in the Midwest, like everybody was kind of in the same boat. Like nobody was having a good time really.
Yeah, it's
People would have to put tablecloths over their kitchen tables and with the bowls and everything underneath it because the dust storms would just come in and completely cover their houses in dust. And there was one book I read about, it was like a small child having to have her cereal, or it wasn't really cereal, it was like porridge with bits of dust and sand just in the cereal because that's just how it had to be. There was no getting around it.
so what you're saying is the real enemy that needs to be shot are not horses, but it's the dust.
I mean, if that's what you want to take away from.
I like to imagine that.
Okay.
But yeah,
But
I
yeah,
absolutely love this. There's nothing about it that I don't love. It just looks great. The makeup gets progressively, I don't know, it wears down on the characters. They just look
exactly.
like they've been through so much. I don't even know if it's makeup. It might be the actors just really wanting to wrap it up.
Maybe.
So yeah, 10 out of 10. There's nothing I can say.
And I give it an 8 out of 10 because
Boo.
I feel like, yeah, I know you shamed me for it when I told you what I gave it, but
Boo. Can we get a
I
boo in the
just
comments?
I just feel like I didn't love it as much as you did, and I think that it is hard to watch, and I feel like maybe that's why I can't give it higher than an 8. I don't know. Well, anyway, that's all that we have for this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a comment, leave us a review, whatever you can on the platform that you're listening to this.
Thank you so much if you do.
And we'll see you next episode.